Well, white privilege is privilege. And what is privilege? Privilege is this idea that, some people or some situations, well, people have an advantage more than others, have a leg up. Can I say that? Is that a thing? I don't know. Than others. And this is true. Privilege exists. And why privilege exists? Because it's of the same reason that any privilege exists. It's people are preferred. And the reason why people are preferred is because there's certain things in life that we're told is good. And there's certain things in life that are just naturally what we perceive as great and something to aspire to. And so the people who have these things and the people who um, have these things in abundance are going to be preferred, are going to be looked up to, or are going to be seen as the standard. And so white people are a group that is preferred and therefore is privileged. White people are preferred because they they have a look, okay? Because really, for the most part, racism is about looks. We look at each other, and based on what we look like, we pull away or we pull towards. A lot of times, we pull towards people who look like us, and or we pull towards the people who don't look like us, depending on what we prefer. So, white people have a look that is preferred. And because white people are a group that has millions of people who have the same look, which is white, those people they they have this the same thing that every human being has, which is the ego that tells them that something that is different from me is not mine, and so I should separate from it. Along with the fact that they have a look that is preferred, so they prefer their look, and also non-white people prefer their look, and so white people in certain countries, let's say the United States, white people are the majority, and so the majority, um, because you're the majority and you prefer your own kind, you will treat your own kind as better because you're the majority and you have most of the wealth and stuff. Then sure, you are not only getting a better treatment by your own kind and by people who aren't your own kind, but you are in a situation where the transfer of wealth and of like positive interest or whatever is being done amongst your people, which is the majority, which prefer each other. So because of all this going on, the people outside of that, especially people who look the least like like white people, like let's say if I was white, like my group, the people who look the least like me are are um are going to be at a disadvantage. Okay, because you're the majority and you don't look like me. Sorry, you're the minority and you don't look like me. And if you're the minority and look like me, then and you don't have all the wealth like we have all the wealth, and I have all the wealth, and we're sharing the wealth with each other. Not that I'm not saying white people don't share their wealth at all. I'm just saying that life is going to be easier for white people in this case. And if your life is easier and you're preferred, and that means you will have an advantage. because people are going to treat the people that they prefer and the people who are in their own group, especially when they prefer. When you prefer something, you treat it good. And if that thing that you prefer is what looks like you really treat it good. So, um, so white people um, will, uh, in the country where they're the majority, will be treated better because they're majority and they prefer their own kind. Now, how do they have privilege outside of the countries that they are not the majority? By Because of the fact that people people tend to people prefer whiteness. So when you're your own kind, okay, and you have a preference for your own kind, you treat your own kind better. But if even when you're not, these people are not your own kind. Even when you're in this case, when you're a non-white person, the preference aspect of it is causing non-white people, because they prefer whiteness so much, to um, treat white people better. Okay, so if you prefer something and it's your own kind, you really treat it good. If you prefer something and it's not your own kind, you're going to treat it good also. And sometimes people who aren't um, your own kind is going to treat you even better than your own kind, because those people who are not their own kind, they want so badly to be accepted by the people who they see as a majority, and the people who have an advantage, and the people who are in the mainstream, the people who are the standard. Because the people who are in the mainstream and the standard, they have a dominance. They want really badly to be accepted by the dominant society, because it's a safety issue. It's a I'm all the way back here. Huh? It's a safety issue, and it's a way to feel safe, and it's a security issue. So so this is one reason. It's just like the slave master and the so-called Uncle Tom, right? That Uncle Tom person, they're treating that slave master better than their own kind, because they know that their life, you know, that their life is in the hands of the slave master. They have to get his approval. They have to get um, his favor, because that's how he stays alive. That's how he stays safe. That's how he stay um, in a place where he doesn't have to get as much whippings and as much maybe work than the slaves. And then that Uncle Tom guy develops a disdain towards his own kind, because that own kind represents a part of him that he believes deserves to be whipped and deserves to be a slave. He can't get away from looking like a slave because he's black. And so when he sees those slaves over there, they represent that part of him that he don't like, he doesn't love. And so um and so yeah, it's just like that. So I'm just saying this to say that this is one reason why people have privilege no matter where they go. They have privilege in their own community because they're preferred. If you're preferred in general, you're preferred by your own kind and you're preferred by not your own kind. Preference is just like a general thing. So, I don't know if I said enough about white privilege. I'm sure, I mean, these topics, they don't end. So, you know, next question. When people have privilege, they, they tend to carry guilt and carry shame. And the ones who are not carrying a whole lot of guilt and shame, they're carrying to some degree. And there's also this idea of a need to a need um, to be better than the other. Okay, and the reason why people are like this, not just white people, people in general, because everybody kind of has some privilege of some sort. Most people, the majority of people have some privilege of some sort, right? So what was I saying? Um, yeah, there is this need to feel better, to feel superior to other people. The ego is what is the ego will not exist unless it knows that it can feel superior to some people. Okay, and so there is this need to feel superior, and people have that, and they also have a shame towards that, and they have it subconsciously, and they need it because they need to feel superior. Okay, but they don't know they have it. It's subconscious. They have it, and they don't want to let go of it. They don't want to let go of that need, because they let go of that need. It means I'm going to have to let go of being superior too. So for people to acknowledge their privilege is to acknowledge that they have this advantage, and it's hard for them to do that, because they're going to have to face the shame and the guilt that comes with having an advantage. And if they're acknowledging that they have an advantage, they're also acknowledging that they're going to have to do something about it, and they're going to have to take responsibility for it, and that's hard. It's hard because the pride comes in, and they don't want to. They want the pride of the shame of having that advantage comes up, and they don't want to face that. They don't want to face a responsibility. And I'm not saying that they definitely have a responsibility, but they think they do. Whatever you think you do, whatever you think or whatever is, whatever it's just something you believe, or it's actually so, it's so because you believe it. And so it's hard for white people to acknowledge their privilege, because it means that they believe that they're going to have to lose privilege, which means they're going to lose an advantage, and then they're going to lose some kind of a sense of being better than others. And listen, I'm not saying that white people have this need to be better than others and nobody else does. We all have it inside of us, because we have an ego, and the ego, one of the ego's objective is to feel as if it is above others. So this is a human thing, and it's going to extend to every part of your personality, every part of your being, every part of your identity. So if you're a woman, you want to know that you're better than a man. If you are black, you want to know you're better than white or other races. And if you're white, you want to know that too. Okay? So, but white people have it really bad. Have that, the guilt of having that very much, because of the history that they have behind it. So not only do I do they have that same thing that everybody has inside of them, this need to feel superior, but they've had the perception of this this I don't know what to call it, a perception, a false perception really of of some kind of inherent superiority, um, that came along with white people being white and having white skin, and white skin being being preferred, and and also being rich and everything like that. being richer. So you know, the guilt for them is much more than other people. The guilt that comes and the shame that comes with having privilege, um, is much more than other people. I may have gotten sidetracked there a little bit. Hold on. So it's harder for them to acknowledge those things. And if they acknowledge it, it also tells them that there's something, that they have an ego, that they have, that they're wrong for being who they are. And it's hard for people to admit that they're wrong. The need to be right is one of the strongest human need. And so, um, these are some of the reasons why people are, cannot acknowledge their privilege. It's not because they're more evil than other people. It's just that, if you were in their position, you would be the same way. Because if whatever privilege you have as a black person, or as a woman, or whatever you identify as, that identify as and identify with, that gives you an advantage, or makes you great in any way. Um, Sometimes, depending on what it is, you know, it will be hard for you to acknowledge it, because somehow it means that, you are responsible somehow for other people's disadvantage, and it's hard for you to come in and acknowledge that, because it means that you're going to have to make changes, and you're going to have to lose some of that privilege. Which, in this case, white people losing privilege is not actually going to happen. It's just that they believe that it is going to happen, and so that, that all that continues to lend to the reason why they cannot acknowledge their privilege, and so they say it doesn't exist because they don't want to acknowledge it. No, because, it's the whiteness of the skin. The whiteness of the skin, is seen as, uh, not just a symbol of beauty, but a symbol of being closer to Godness. Okay, white, the color white, um, being of race or not, is adored, is preferred, whereas being black is seen as nasty, as dirty, as dark, and of the devil, of hell, of, it's sinister, it's evil, it's ugly, it's all of these bad things. And so, because white people are white, you know, they're going to have people are just going to see the white skin as having, um, something great inherent inside of it. Okay, so, a ugly white person, a poor white person, a dumb white person, dumb, a, short white person, a, um, what else? What else do people prefer that creates privilege? Whatever. Because the whiteness is there. That gives them white privilege. They will not have privilege in these other areas, but they will have privilege because of the white skin. Because whiteness is preferred, is the preferred, color for skin, and the preferred color in general. It's not going to be anytime soon. Um, but anything is possible. Anything is possible, but, it's not going to be anytime soon. And even when it starts to fade, there's still going to be, some remnants of it in some shape or form. It's still going to exist to some degree. But we should not be focused on trying to get racism to go away, especially since it's not going to be anytime soon. Because it can't just go away like that. Especially since the way we're going about it is so counterproductive. Um, Racism we have to deal with it in a way where we should start with us trying to do what we need to do to reduce the extra fear and the extra anxiety around the issue of race. And we have to start by understanding each other first, understanding each other's plight, because believe it or not, even white people have plight. And from what I see from my expert perspective, I would have to say that white people have a really big plight that a lot of people can't see, which is things I want to teach about pretty in the very, very near future and write about. Um, we have to start to do things to reduce the anxiety. And how do we do that? We have people and everybody, and this is easy. It's easy, but it will be hard because it's hard for people to jump over the hurdle of um, of the ego that they have around this particular issue of acknowledging what they feel. Because I teach that all human beings are racist to some degree. It's not that people aren't racist, and some people are. It's just that some people are more racist than others. So the people that we see that are that we assume that aren't racist, it's not that they're not racist. It's just that potentially they're less racist than other people. Um, so being that all people are racist, people have to start by acknowledging that. Look in the mirror and say that I am a racist. Buy my book, buy Jada's book, and do the worksheet, the racist worksheet. It goes through um, the different feelings, thoughts, beliefs about and emotions about racism. It's a very good way to start a process of releasing what you feel, because people have to release. People have to start to release the tension inside of them, the pain inside of them, the anger inside of them. Okay, and that's how they start, by acknowledging that they are racist. Telling yourself that you're not racist is not going to, even if you weren't, even if it was possible for people to not be racist, telling yourself that you're not racist is not going to have it go away. Anything you want to release from your body, any emotion, any pain, any trauma, any even physical things, if you want to heal yourself from anything, you first have to acknowledge it. So when we get people to acknowledge that they are racist, the healing process starts, because they start to release it from their body. Okay, but it's hard for them because for centuries, okay, yeah, for centuries, being racist has been wrong, and so because it's been wrong and wronged for so long, it's hard for human beings to acknowledge that that they're racist. But you cannot heal unless you acknowledge that. Okay, if everybody keep looking to one people over there, one person over there, and saying, "Oh, they're the racist and I'm not," not only is it continue to make it wrong, and when you make something wrong, it's hard for people to acknowledge it, because if it's wrong and only them are racist over there, then I can't acknowledge that I'm racist because um, it's wrong and I'm gonna look like the bad guy. So people people have to first acknowledge it. That's how you release it. When you keep it inside of you, you keep the resentments inside of you, the disdain, the fear, the insecurities, the anxiety. It builds and builds and it festers and get more, while telling yourself that you're a good person and you're not racist. And the more you tell you that, the more you tell yourself that, the more you suppress the truth, and the more it festers. And then at some point, it's gonna explode and become worse, worse like it's getting now. We see it happening, and so people need to be listening to me talk about racism. So far, I have the best stuff that I've seen as far as racism, um, and it resonates with people. I'm not saying there's no other person out there that have my same views. I'm sure, um, but I don't see it. And if you see it, let me know. But we have to start with understanding, and how we understand is to get somebody like me or other experts who does the same work, um, and understand that acknowledgement and reducing the evil out of race, out of being racist rather, is how to heal racism. We cannot heal it by shaming one people that they're racist and telling the other people that they can't be racist. And so, and also that being racist is the most evil thing in the world, and it's wrong to be racist and all these other things. It just causes people to shut down and hate themselves. And when people shut down and hate themselves because they feel something inside of them that is subconscious, that they're not conscious to, but they still feel it, they're gonna hate you even more. Like white people are gonna hate black people even more because they're telling them that they have something inside of them that they don't have. Okay, that they're racist and nobody else is racist but them, and so they can't acknowledge it because it's the worst thing in the world, and so they shut down and they suppress it, and the festering gets more and then more. They push it down and suppress it. It festers more and it gets worse, and we think it's getting better because it's of political correctness, but it's not. It's actually getting worse underneath all that PC-ness. It's getting worse, and we don't know it's getting worse, but it is, because we see it getting worse every day, but we don't realize why it's getting worse. And so we don't know. In a way, we kind of don't know it's getting worse because we don't see why. Because we think that the things that are actually, we think that the things that are causing the problems are going to be the solution. We think that the problem is a solution. We don't know that a problem is a problem. We don't know that telling black people that, oh, black people can't be racist, and telling white people that only they could be racist, and and making race being racist, not racism, being racist, the worst thing in the world to me. We think doing these things are going to bring healing, and it's the very things that are causing the problem. And so the problem escalate, and the more it escalates, the more we keep doing the same things because we think that they're the solution. If you think it's a solution, we're gonna continue to do it, and then it gets worse, and it gets worse. So we apply the same counterproductive fuckery we've been using, that is actually escalating, and it escalate, and then we do more, and it's not looking pretty. It's not looking pretty for the society, and people need to start listening to me. People need to start understanding what's going on here. It's gonna get bad, and unless they're ready, and they have to truly be ready to make changes and to consider different alternative perspectives and radical change. Unless they're ready for that, it's not gonna be a pretty near future, very near future, by the way. Some people think that white supremacy is suggesting that white people are supreme. That is not what, when people speak of white supremacy, that's not what they're saying. There's somebody like Jesse Peterson. He has this idea of, whenever black people are on his show or whatever, and says the term, and uses the term white supremacy, that black people are saying that white people are superior. Now, maybe in some shape or form, some black people might be suggesting that, but for the most part, they're not saying that. They're mentioning the concept and the idea of white white people and whiteness being supreme. The concept of it, the idea of it all. But the concept and the idea of white supremacy is, it came from um, the perception of white people being white And whiteness is great, whiteness is pureness, whiteness is beauty, whiteness is all of these things. And because we have this perception of whiteness, and and we also have egos, you know, white people will have that perception of themselves with their egos, and and so, you know, that will become an imprint in their minds and in our minds and in society, the mind of society, that white is superior in every way, and white set the standards for everything, and white people are more deserving, and people with, not just white people, people with white skin and whiter skin and fairer skin are more deserving of a good life and should be more privileged. Um, I think that's all I have to say about white supremacy right now. Listen, I have a very, an extreme view on on the whole idea of being reprimanded. My views uh, says that people who do bad things, not just racial crimes or racism, people who do bad things are in pain and are traumatized, highly traumatized beings. And when you have people who are like that, um, putting them in, punishing them, only make them worse. They might think it's making them better, and it might bring them some level of humility, but it will not truly really make them better, because the people who you see go to jail and they come out looking um, uh, rehabilitated. Now, maybe some of them did have some kind of a some spiritual turnaround, but for the most part, all you're looking at is a person who has suppressed um, their darkness and their dark side, and they're operating from this false sense of of humility and a false sense of being turned around. Not that they have bad intentions to, conscious bad intentions to do bad things again, or to do bad things in general, but um, that suppressed part of them is still a part of them. Okay, so they're still capable of doing bad things. I'm just saying that they're still capable of doing bad things, you know, because the punishment didn't help them. The punishment potentially most of the times, and high, very high most of the time, make them worse. So here they are walking out of jail and, you know, feeling worse than ever before. Um, and not only that, they come out and they can't get jobs and shit. They can't function like people can function who are not felons and who are not who did not commit some federal um, offense. So um, I'm just saying this to say that crime in general, I can't just say about racial crimes. People who commit crimes in general, what they need is healing. What they need is intense emotional inner child healing, not jail time, not prison, not punishment. So I can't even speak specifically of racial crimes or racial acts um, to be reprimanded or to be punished. But as far as small little things like racial slur, and if you're talking about, let's say like a celebrity says something horrible about white people. I mean, well, yeah, white people or black people, um, or gays or trans people, should they be reprimanded? I think they they too need to go through a process where they need to, just like I explained about, how we're gonna heal racism from society. Um, it will take time, and it will take time for the individual, but they need to go to a process where they, learn to understand themselves and understand why they do say and do the things they do. Learn to become more sensitive to people's to people's identities or whatever. You know, learn to reduce some of the fear and the anxiety. You know, and that's what people need to do. When you take away their jobs, and you let's say somebody says something bad about in the public eye about black people, you take away their job, they're still racist. Being reprimanded when you take them away, you stop giving them acting jobs. They stop telling the news on the radio. They stop telling jokes. And when you destroy their whole career, what has happened then? They haven't stopped being racist. They're still racist, and potentially they're more racist. Because you know it is these people that I don't like that did this to me. Okay, now maybe you don't care if they have that perception that the people that they don't like did this to them, or you don't care if they became more racist. But well, you should care because the more and more you do that to people, the more the society builds this anger and this contempt with you, and we should care how we're creating anger for people, because just like people, in this case, the white people should care what black people are feeling, because this is what racism is. Because white people didn't give a damn how the fuck you feel, so they treated you any kind of way in history, and to some degree till today. So what you're doing, which is counterproductive, which you think is productive, but is not, that is causing pain for them and cause anger for them. We need to evaluate those things. Okay. So in this case, when we're reprimanding people for saying and doing certain racial acts, it's causing more problem. People need to understand that, well, the reason why people are doing this is because they're assuming that, only some people are racist. But this is a big problem in for us, because um, the more and more, and you might think that the people on your side, like your white um, friends were liberal, and we're all about progress and shit, and we're all about being PC. You might think they're on your side, but in a way they're not, because they're internalizing all that stuff you're saying. You that Especially in this case, when a celebrity says something bad, and then you have this this thing of shutting them down when they say things that are horrible about black people, or any so-called disadvantaged group. Um, it's just it's causing more and more. Yeah, those people that you think are your friends, um, they're not your friends in that sense, because even though they say they're on your side, and they're taking a stand with you, the fact that they're still white, and the fact that when you shut them down, other white people, in a way you're shutting them down, and really they're really not on your side about it, and so that the anger inside of them is building, and sometimes even building even more. It's festering inside of them too, and so and so yeah. Again, when you suppress anything, and it stays there and fester, in the long run it's going to be bad. You don't you don't explain racism to children. explaining racism to children is is how is one reason that is one thing that creates more racism. Because when you say to this child, people people have children, and then they take the child and say, those people over there, they're those black people, they don't have as much privilege as you, and so you have to be nice to them, okay? Don't say bad things to them. Don't be mean. Don't do this. Be tolerant, okay, and accept them. Number one, what you've just done is you already you're already heightening and increasing this egotistical and this separateness awareness within that child, between them and that black child or those black people. Because if you pay attention to children, in the park, the adults are separated. The adults are not talking to each other. The adults, and I mean, today in today's world, people are still very segregated. The adults are segregated, but the children are playing. They're fine. Okay, so you telling them that that black child over there is supposed to be your friend, and is supposed to, you're supposed to be nice to them. You're telling that child how much her and that black child is not the same. And even if they see that they're not the same, the fact that you're telling them, you're adding to them because they're listening to you as adult, and children are listening to adults to know what's right. And so the child just becomes either consciously or subconsciously more aware of how different they are from those people over there, and how they're, and if they're very different, then in a way, then we're not connected, even though we're kind of connected because I'm supposed to be nice to them, but the fact that you're already telling me that they're different than me, um, I'm not really connected to them. And so what I wrote in my book is I wrote about training people about tolerance and training people about acceptance, and how that was a problem along the way. That was a problem along the way because when we train people and children to tolerate people, what we tell them is that there's an indirect message that you send in a subconscious subliminal message that you send to them that those people are intolerant, are not intolerant. Those people are not, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh God. You're telling them not to tolerate these people. Okay, because if you saw them as tolerant, I mean, when you see something as tolerant, it's because you see it as intolerant. Okay, you wouldn't need to tolerate anything if you didn't see it as something bad. And so once you're telling children to tolerate, what you're telling them is that there's something bad about that person, so you should tolerate them. And so this idea that parents and people have applied to society and has suggested to children, it caused racism to heighten because become the children themselves to become even more racist and grow up into very racist adults without actually knowing they're racist. Because you're telling them this thing over here is wrong and you should tolerate it. But telling them you already separated them from each other by telling them that how just make them become more aware in some shape or form, more aware of how different they are. Okay, which the children didn't need that from you, because if you were paying attention, you would see how much separated you are from that child's over their parent, that black child parent, and that black child family as adults. But the children in the park are playing and they don't give a damn about each other's different color and skin and shit. So tolerance and and teaching tolerance and preaching acceptance um, will never work. This adds to the problem. So do not explain racism to your children. Let them grow up and decide um, what they like and don't like, and maybe eventually they will learn it to some extent. But for the most part, we got racism from our parents, and maybe we didn't get it directly from them, but we got it indirectly, and we got it in the form of trauma, you know, in the form of whatever trauma they went through. They created some insecurity inside of them, and then they go to school, and then they start to compare themselves to other children in every single way, including race. So whether directly or indirectly, you got racism from your parents.